There is a kind of phone call that changes everything. Not the ones you expect. Not the ones you prepare for. The ones that come at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday when your daughter is already asleep in the next room and you think, just for a moment, that the day is over and tomorrow will be manageable. Those calls. The school principal's voice was calm. Professional. The kind of calm that has been practiced, that comes with a script and a legal team and 40 years of institutional authority behind it. Mr. Harmon. We've made a decision regarding Emma. Effective immediately, she is expelled from Westbrook Academy. 1 sentence. 11 words. The future of a 12-year-old girl, dismantled in 11 words by a woman who had never once learned her daughter's name correctly. Music cuts to silence. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He didn't say anything at all for a long moment. He walked to his daughter's bedroom door. He listened to her breathing, the slow, peaceful breathing of a child who didn't know yet. Who was still safe in sleep. Who still believed that the world was basically fair. He closed his eyes. And he made a decision. Not an angry decision. Not a desperate one. A father's decision. The kind that moves quietly, and changes everything. His name was Marcus Harmon. 42 years old. Single father of a 12-year-old girl named Emma Grace Harmon. He worked as a paralegal at a mid-sized law firm in the city of Caldwell, a place where old money and new development existed in constant, polite tension. He had worked there for 9 years, long enough to know where every document was filed, long enough to know the law well enough that the attorney sometimes forgot he wasn't one. He lived in a modest house on Birchwood Lane, 3 bedrooms, a small backyard where Emma had once tried to grow sunflowers with mixed results, and a kitchen that smelled permanently of the coffee he started every morning at 5:45 a.m. Emma's mother had passed away when Emma was 4 years old. A cardiac event, sudden, without warning, in the middle of an ordinary Wednesday. Marcus had been at work. He had gotten the call in the parking lot of a sandwich shop where he'd gone to pick up lunch. He never went back to that sandwich shop. He had spent the first year after losing her learning how to be everything. Not just a father, everything. The person who remembered dentist appointments and school picture days and which brand of hair ties Emma preferred and how to braid hair on a Tuesday morning when everything is already running late. He made mistakes. Many of them. He burned dinners and forgot permission slips and once showed up to Emma's dance recital on the wrong day, a memory that still made him close his eyes slowly when it surfaced. But he showed up. Always. Without exception. Without complaint. Emma had grown into a remarkable child, quiet, observant, with a mind that worked in careful, precise ways that reminded Marcus sometimes of a watchmaker. She read constantly. She asked questions that adults found disarming. She had her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness and a laugh that Marcus had decided, privately, was the best sound in the world. 2 years ago, Emma had been awarded a full merit scholarship to Westbrook Academy, the most prestigious private school in Caldwell. The kind of school where the parking lot looked like a luxury car showroom and the PTA meetings had catered food and the board of directors included 3 city council members and a federal judge. Emma had earned her place there entirely on the basis of her academic record. Not connections. Not donations. Not legacy admissions. Pure merit. Marcus had sat in his car in the Westbrook Academy parking lot on her first day and watched her walk through those iron gates with her backpack and her careful posture and her mother's eyes, and he had felt something so large and so complicated that he had needed a full 5 minutes before he trusted himself to drive. She belonged there. He knew it. She knew it. What Marcus had not fully understood on that first day, what he would come to understand slowly, over 24 months of careful observation, was that Westbrook Academy had a particular way of relating to scholarship students. They were tolerated. Showcased occasionally, when diversity statistics needed presenting. But not truly welcomed. Not by everyone. And specifically not by the school's principal, a woman named Dr. Carolyn Whitfield, who had run Westbrook Academy for 15 years with the particular iron certainty of someone who had never once been seriously questioned. Emma Harmon was 12 years old and she was braver than anyone gave her credit for. She had navigated Westbrook Academy with the quiet resilience of a child who understood, without being told explicitly, that she was operating in a space that hadn't been fully built for her. The other students came from families with lake houses and international vacations and parents who sat on the school's fundraising committees. Emma came from Birchwood Lane and a father who packed her lunch every morning and left a handwritten note in her lunchbox every single day without exception. Every single day. In 2 years, he had not missed once. Sometimes the notes were funny. Sometimes they were just, "I love you, have a great day." Sometimes, on the hard days, the days when Emma came home quieter than usual, they were longer. A paragraph. A story. A reminder. The strongest trees grow in the most difficult soil. I know because I'm watching one grow right now. Dad. Emma kept every note. In a shoebox under her bed. 173 of them. She had one friend at Westbrook, a girl named Priya, whose parents were both doctors and who had chosen Emma's friendship with the same deliberate, considered judgment she applied to everything. Priya was the one who told Emma the truth about how the other students talked about scholarship kids when they thought nobody was listening. And Emma was the one who told Priya that it didn't matter, that what people said about you in the dark couldn't touch what you built in the light. It was something her father had told her. In October of her second year, a situation arose in Mr. Patterson's history class. The class had been studying local civic history, the founding of Caldwell, its early institutions, the influential families whose names appeared on buildings and endowments across the city. The Whitfield family was among them. Dr. Carolyn Whitfield's grandfather had been a founding donor of Westbrook Academy itself. His portrait hung in the main hallway. Emma had done what Emma always did, she had gone deeper than the assignment required. She had researched. She had cross-referenced. She had found, in the city's public historical records, documentation that raised significant questions about how certain land acquisitions underlying those early endowments had been conducted. Questions that were a matter of historical record. Questions that any serious historian would consider relevant. She had included these findings in her history project. Cited. Sourced. Academically rigorous. Mr. Patterson had given her an A. Dr. Whitfield had called her into her office the following Monday. The conversation had lasted 11 minutes. Emma had come home that evening quieter than usual. She had eaten dinner carefully. Done her homework. Said good night. She had not told Marcus what happened. Because Emma was 12 years old and brave, and sometimes brave means carrying things alone so the people you love don't have to worry. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday evening at 9 p.m., Marcus's phone rang. Dr. Carolyn Whitfield. Mr. Harmon. We've made a decision regarding Emma. Effective immediately, she is expelled from Westbrook Academy. The grounds are conduct unbecoming of a Westbrook student and academic misconduct in the preparation of a class assignment. Academic misconduct, Marcus repeated. The specific nature will be detailed in a letter delivered tomorrow morning. Dr. Whitfield, my daughter is 12 years old. She's asleep in the next room. Can you tell me right now, specifically, what she is alleged to have done? A pause. The letter will explain everything, Mr. Harmon. I'm asking you to explain it now. Another pause. Longer. She submitted a project containing material that was defamatory toward the institution and its founders. The school board reviewed it today and the decision was unanimous. Marcus was very still. The school board reviewed my daughter's homework, he said. This is a serious matter. Good night, Dr. Whitfield, Marcus said. He hung up. He walked to Emma's door. Listened to her breathing. And then he went to his kitchen table, sat down with a yellow legal pad, and began to write. Not a letter. Not a complaint. A strategy. Marcus Harmon had worked as a paralegal for 9 years. He was not a lawyer. He was careful never to claim he was. But 9 years of reading case law, drafting legal documents, preparing discovery packages, and sitting across from attorneys who thought and argued and strategized, 9 years of that left marks. He understood procedure. He understood documentation. He understood the difference between what institutions said and what institutions could legally do. He understood that power, when examined closely and calmly, almost always had edges, places where it ended, places where it could be questioned, places where the person with less money and less authority could nonetheless stand their ground if they knew where to stand. He also understood something else. He understood that Westbrook Academy was a private institution, but one that received significant public funding through scholarship programs administered by the city's education department. That relationship created oversight obligations. Obligations that had specific legal frameworks. He understood that the expulsion of a scholarship student for submitting a historically accurate, properly cited academic project, a project that had received an A from the classroom teacher, raised serious questions under those frameworks. He understood that the involvement of the school board in reviewing a student's homework assignment, and making an expulsion decision the same day, without notifying the student's parent, without a hearing, without due process, raised further questions. Serious ones. And he understood, perhaps most importantly, that Dr. Carolyn Whitfield's family name was on the founding documents of the institution whose reputation Emma's project had examined. He wrote until 2 a.m. At 2:15, he made a list of phone calls he would make in the morning. At 2:30, he went to Emma's room. She was still asleep. He straightened her blanket, the one with the stars on it that she'd had since she was 5 and refused to give up. He whispered, "I've got you." Then he went to bed for 3 hours. At 5:45, he made coffee. At 6:15, he woke Emma. She came to the kitchen table in her pajamas, sleep rumpled, and looked at her father's face, and knew. "She called you," Emma said. "Last night." Emma was quiet. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the project." "Why didn't you?" Emma looked at her hands. "Because I knew it would become a thing. And I was hoping it wouldn't." Marcus looked at his daughter, 12 years old, carrying 3 weeks of this alone so he wouldn't have to worry. "Emma," he said. "Was your project accurate?" "Yes." "Was it cited?" "Every source." "Did you make anything up?" "No, Baba. Never." He nodded. "Then eat your breakfast," he said. "I'm going to handle it." Emma looked at him. "How?" He picked up his yellow legal pad. "The right way," he said. Marcus Harmon made 7 phone calls between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. The first was to his supervisor at the law firm, a senior attorney named Patricia Osei, who had known Marcus for 6 years and who listened to the situation in complete silence for 4 minutes before saying, "Send me everything. And don't go to that school without me." The second was to the city's Department of Education, specifically the office that administered public scholarship funding, where he spoke to a compliance officer named David Reyes, who listened to the timeline of the expulsion decision and said, very carefully, "Mr. Harmon, that procedure does not sound consistent with our funding agreement requirements. I'd like to see the documentation." The third was to a journalist named Sandra Kim at the Caldwell City Gazette, not to make a story, not yet, but to establish a contact. To let someone outside the institution know what had happened. The fourth was to the office of City Councilwoman Renata Diaz, whose district included Westbrook Academy and whose re-election campaign had made much of her commitment to educational equity. Her assistant took a very detailed message. The fifth was to a civil rights education attorney named James Webb, a man Patricia Osei had recommended, who specialized in student rights cases and whose first question, after hearing the facts, was, "The board member whose family is in the project, she sat in on the expulsion vote." "I believe so," Marcus said. A pause. "That's a conflict of interest," Webb said. "A significant one." The sixth was to the parents of Priya, who called back within 20 minutes to say they had retained an independent copy of Emma's project through Priya's school files, and that they stood ready to provide it to anyone who needed it. The seventh call, the last one, at 8:57 a.m., was to Westbrook Academy. He asked to speak with Dr. Whitfield. He was told she was unavailable. He asked to speak with the board chair. He was told the board chair was also unavailable. He left a message. "Please inform Dr. Whitfield and the board chair that Marcus Harmon, Emma Harmon's father, will be at the school at 10 a.m. for a formal hearing regarding the expulsion decision. He will be accompanied by legal counsel. He requests that all board members who participated in yesterday's vote be present, along with complete documentation of the process by which the decision was made. Thank you." He hung up. He put on his best suit, the one he wore to depositions. He drove Emma to Patricia's house, where Patricia's daughter, also 12, had been briefed and welcomed Emma with the particular warmth of a child who had been raised by a good person. Emma hugged him at the door. "Baba," she said. "Are you scared?" He looked at his daughter. "No," he said. It was almost true. "Before I tell you what happened when Marcus Harmon walked through those iron gates at Westbrook Academy, I need to stop for just a moment. Because if you are listening to this story right now, if something in it is touching a place inside you, I want to ask you something. Do you have a father who showed up for you? A father who sat at a kitchen table at 2 a.m. writing on a yellow legal pad because he refused to let the world be unfair to you? A father who packed your lunch and left notes in your lunchbox and whispered, "I've got you," when he thought you were asleep? A father who put on his best suit and walked into rooms full of power and money and authority, alone, afraid, but completely unwilling to back down, because you were on the other side of those doors? If you have a father like that, or if you had a father like that, or if you are a father like that, this channel is for you. The Single Brave Dad Stories exists for one reason, to make sure the world never forgets what fathers like Marcus Harmon look like. What they do in the dark, when nobody is watching, when the phone rings at 9 p.m. and the world falls apart and they just keep going. If your dad is your hero, if your dad was your whole world, if your dad is the reason you are who you are today, then please, hit that subscribe button right now. Press that bell icon so you never miss a single story. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who had a father like Marcus. Share it with someone who has a father like Marcus. Because love is not just a feeling. Love is a man in his best suit walking into a room full of powerful people, for you. Subscribe to the Single Brave Dad Stories. Prove the love. Now, let's go back to Marcus. Because what happens next, what he does in that boardroom, will make you stand up and cheer. Marcus Harmon arrived at Westbrook Academy at 10 a.m. exactly. Patricia Osei walked beside him. James Webb, the education attorney, walked on his other side. Webb was 53 years old and had argued student rights cases in front of 3 state courts, and he carried his briefcase with the particular ease of a man who had never lost a case he believed in. The receptionist at the front desk, a young woman named Kelly who had always been kind to Emma, looked up when they entered and her expression shifted slightly. Something in the quality of the 3 people in front of her, the quiet professionalism of their bearing, the documents under their arms, registered as different from the usual parent complaint. "Mr. Harmon," she said. Let me call." "Thank you," Marcus said pleasantly. "We'll wait." They waited exactly 4 minutes. Then the door to the administrative wing opened and Dr. Carolyn Whitfield came through it, followed by 2 board members Marcus recognized from the school website, and a man in a suit he didn't recognize who turned out to be the school's legal counsel. Dr. Whitfield looked at the 3 people in the lobby. Her eyes moved from Marcus to Patricia to Webb. She recognized Webb, her expression told Marcus that clearly. Whatever she had expected this morning to look like, it had not looked like James Webb. "Mr. Harmon," she said. "We weren't expecting." "I left a message," Marcus said. "This morning. 8:57. We received it. However, a formal hearing requires scheduling." "We're happy to schedule a formal hearing," Webb said, stepping forward with his card. "James Webb, Education Law. We'd like to schedule it for today, given that my client's 12-year-old daughter was expelled last night without parental notification, without a hearing, and without the due process required under your scholarship funding agreement with the city's Department of Education." Silence. Additionally, Webb continued, "We'll be requesting full documentation of yesterday's board vote, specifically, the names of all board members who participated, any declarations of conflict of interest made prior to the vote, and the complete record of the review process applied to the student's academic work." The school's legal counsel was already leaning toward Whitfield, speaking quietly. Whitfield's face had undergone a subtle but significant change. The iron certainty was still there, but something behind it had shifted. "I think," the school's counsel said carefully, "we should perhaps move to a conference room." They moved to a conference room. Marcus sat across the table from 4 people who represented one of the most powerful private educational institutions in Caldwell. He had his yellow legal pad. He had Patricia on one side and Webb on the other. He had documentation. And he had something else. He had Emma's project. Printed. Bound. Tabbed. With every source highlighted, every citation verified, every historical record cross-referenced with the city's public archive. He placed it in the center of the table. "This is the academic work for which my daughter was expelled," he said. "I'd like to go through it, page by page, and identify the specific elements that constitute," I'm quoting from Dr. Whitfield's call last night, "defamatory material and academic misconduct." Nobody reached for it. "While we do that," Webb said, "I'd also like to discuss the timeline. The project was submitted 3 weeks ago. It received an A from the classroom teacher. The expulsion decision was made yesterday, by the board, without notifying the parent, without a student hearing, and, as far as we can determine, on the same day that the review was conducted." He paused. "Under the terms of the city's scholarship funding agreement, which I have here, a scholarship student may not be expelled without a minimum 72-hour written notice to the parent, a formal hearing with the student present and represented, and a documented review process that does not involve board members with a personal conflict of interest." He placed the funding agreement on the table next to Emma's project. "Dr. Whitfield," he said, "am I correct that your family name appears in the historical records examined in this project?" A long pause. "My grandfather." "Did you recuse yourself from the board vote?" Silence. "That's what I thought," Webb said quietly. The school's counsel was writing rapidly on a notepad. The 2 board members were exchanging a look that Marcus recognized, the look of people who had voted for something in a closed room and were now understanding what that vote looked like in a lit one. Marcus leaned forward. "I want my daughter reinstated," he said. "With a formal written apology from the school. I want the expulsion removed from her permanent record. I want a review of the conflict of interest in yesterday's vote. And I want assurances, documented, binding, enforceable, that her scholarship status is protected and that her academic work will be evaluated by educators without personal conflicts." He looked at Dr. Whitfield. "These are not demands I'm making out of anger," he said. "My daughter did nothing wrong. She submitted accurate, cited, historically rigorous academic work. She was punished for it because it made someone in this room uncomfortable. That is not education. That is censorship. And this institution does not have the legal authority, under its public funding obligations, to censor a 12-year-old scholarship student for doing good history." The room was very quiet. Outside the conference room windows, Westbrook Academy's manicured grounds lay in the October morning light, the iron gates, the portrait in the hallway, 40 years of institutional certainty. The school's counsel cleared his throat. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we could take a short recess." They recessed for 32 minutes. Marcus sat in the lobby with Patricia and Webb. He drank the coffee Kelly the receptionist brought him without being asked. Patricia reviewed documents. Webb made 2 phone calls in a low voice in the corner. Marcus sat with his yellow legal pad and thought about Emma, at Patricia's house right now, with Patricia's daughter, probably reading, because Emma read when she was anxious. He thought about the shoebox under her bed with 173 notes in it. He thought about sunflowers in a small backyard with mixed results. Patricia's hand briefly covered his on the table. "You're doing great," she said quietly. He nodded. At 32 minutes exactly, the conference room door opened. The school's counsel came out first. His expression had the particular quality of a man delivering news his client had authorized but did not enjoy. "Mr. Harmon, we'd like to resume." They went back in. Dr. Whitfield was seated differently now. Straighter, more formal, but something underneath the formality had changed. The iron certainty was still in her posture, but it had, quietly, invisibly, been replaced by something else. The certainty of an institution calculating its options. The school's counsel spoke. After consultation, Westbrook Academy acknowledges that the procedure followed in the expulsion decision of Emma Harmon did not fully comply with the requirements of the scholarship funding agreement. The school is prepared to. "Before you continue," Webb said, "I want to note for the record that Compliance Officer David Reyes from the City Department of Education is aware of this situation and has requested documentation. That review is independent of this conversation." A pause. The counsel continued. "The school is prepared to rescind the expulsion immediately. Emma Harmon's record will be cleared. A letter of formal clarification. Written apology," Marcus said. The counsel looked at him. "A written apology," Marcus repeated. "To Emma. Signed by Dr. Whitfield. Not a clarification. An apology. She's 12 years old and she was expelled for doing good work. She deserves an apology." Another pause. Dr. Whitfield, for the first time in the meeting, looked directly at Marcus. He looked back at her without anger. Without triumph. With the steady, patient eyes of a man who had sat at a kitchen table at 2 a.m. and written on a yellow legal pad because his daughter deserved someone who would. "Fine," Dr. Whitfield said. One word. But it carried the weight of 40 years of unquestioned authority, quietly, permanently, adjusted. Webb spent the next hour documenting the agreed terms. The reinstatement. The record clearing. The written apology. A formal review of board conflict of interest protocols. An independent academic review committee for future disputes involving scholarship students. Marcus signed nothing he hadn't read twice. He was a paralegal. He read everything twice. He called Patricia's house from the Westbrook Academy parking lot. Patricia's daughter answered, said, "Hold on," and then Emma's voice came on the line, careful, controlled, trying not to sound as anxious as she was. "Baba. Hey, sweetheart. What happened?" He leaned against his car in the October sunlight. The iron gates of Westbrook Academy behind him. The manicured grounds. The portrait in the hallway. "You're going back to school," he said. "Monday morning. Your record is clear. And Dr. Whitfield is going to write you an apology letter." Silence on the line. Then a sound Marcus would hear for the rest of his life, Emma trying very hard not to cry and completely failing. "Baba. I know, baby. I know. I was so scared. I know. I've got you. I told you. I've got you." He heard her breathing steady slowly. The way it had steadied every time, since she was 4 years old, when she heard his voice. "How did you do it?" she asked finally. He looked at the yellow legal pad on the passenger seat of his car. At his best suit. At his hands, no grease, no tools, just a father who had read enough to know where the edges of power were. "I just showed up," he said. Same as always. The following Monday, Emma Harmon walked back through the iron gates of Westbrook Academy. She walked the same way she always walked, with her backpack and her careful posture and her mother's eyes. Priya was waiting at the entrance, and the two of them went in together without looking back. In Emma's lunchbox that morning was her father's note. Number 174. "The strongest trees grow in the most difficult soil. Today you walk back in. Head up. Work honest. Be exactly who you are, because who you are is extraordinary. I love you more than everything. Dad." She read it twice at lunch. Then she folded it carefully and put it in her pocket. 3 months later, the City Department of Education completed its review of Westbrook Academy's scholarship student procedures and issued a formal compliance directive requiring significant changes to how the school handled student rights. David Reyes, the compliance officer, cited the Harmon case specifically in the directive's introduction. 6 months after that, Emma's history project, the one she had been expelled for, was selected by her history teacher for submission to the state academic achievement competition. It won second place. The judge's comment: exceptional research discipline for a student of any age. Remarkable intellectual courage. Marcus framed the judge's comment. He put it on the kitchen wall, next to the sunflower drawings and the refrigerator full of Emma's artwork. Emma looked at it for a long time the day he hung it. "Baba," she said. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "When you went in there, to the school, were you actually scared?" He thought about it. The honest answer. "Terrified," he said. Emma looked at him. "But you went anyway. You were on the other side of those doors," he said simply. "There was no other option." Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she walked over and hugged him, the way she had hugged him since she was 4 years old, with her whole self, nothing held back. He held her for a long time. Outside, October had turned to November. The small backyard was bare now, the sunflowers long gone. But they would come back in spring. They always did. Marcus Harmon did not have a law degree. He did not have a seat on the school board. He did not have a family name on a building. He did not have 40 years of institutional authority or a portrait in a hallway. He had a yellow legal pad. He had a best suit. He had 9 years of showing up and reading carefully and understanding that power, real power, has edges. And that a father who loves his daughter enough to find those edges in the dark, at 2 a.m., with cold coffee and a breaking heart. That father is the most powerful thing in the world. Before this video ends, I want to ask you something personal. Close your eyes for just 1 second. Think about your father. Think about the things he did that you never fully saw. The calls he made. The rooms he walked into afraid. The nights he sat at the kitchen table working on something so that your morning could be easier. The times he whispered, "I've got you," whether you heard it or not. Pause. If your dad is your hero. If your dad sacrificed everything for you. If your dad showed up, every single time, no matter what. Then this moment is for him. Hit that subscribe button, right now, for your dad. Press that bell icon, for every note he left in your lunchbox. Give this video a thumbs up, for every room he walked into afraid, for you. Share this video, for every father watching right now who needs to hear that what they do matters. That the yellow legal pads and the best suits and the 2 a.m. nights and the packed lunches. It matters. It matters more than anything. Subscribe to the Single Brave Dad Stories. Because every father deserves to be seen. Every daughter deserves a Marcus. And every story like this one deserves to be heard. Until next time, be the father they remember. Be the child who never forgets.